My name is Mia, and 3 years ago I helped Jake build the company that made him a millionaire. I was the first hire at his logistics startup in Austin, the one who coded through the night while he charmed investors during the day. We dated for 2 of those years quietly because he said keeping it private protected the company's image during fundraising. I believed him. I believed a lot of things back then. When he finally ended it, he said I was too intense for someone in his position now. 2 months later, he was engaged to a woman named Brooke, a former pageant queen turned lifestyle influencer with 400,000 followers and absolutely zero shares in the company I helped build from a garage. I told myself I was over it. I really did. I still worked at the company because I owned 8% of it, and walking away meant walking away from money I'd earned with my own hands. Jake and I were civil in meetings. Polite. Professional. I thought that chapter was closed until Brooke decided to open it back up at a company holiday party, in front of 40 of our colleagues, with a glass of champagne in her hand and a smile that could cut glass. "So you're the ex," she said, looking me up and down like I was a stain on the carpet. "Jake told me you used to write his code." "That's sweet. Like a little helper." She laughed, and a few people near her laughed too, the nervous kind of laugh people do, when they don't know if it's safe not to. "I just think it's so brave of you to still work here." Watching him build a real life with someone who actually matches his level. She tilted her head. "No offense." The room went quiet. Jake, to his credit, looked horrified, but he didn't say a word. He just stood there sipping his drink like a man watching a car crash he caused. I smiled, said something forgettable, and walked away with my dignity mostly intact. But something in me had shifted. Something cold and very, very patient. I went to the bathroom, locked the stall, and just breathed for a minute. My hands were shaking, not from sadness, but from the particular fury of being underestimated in front of an audience. When I came back out, my friend Sarah from marketing was waiting by the sinks with a paper towel and a look on her face like she'd witnessed a crime. "That was insane," she whispered. "Are you okay?" I told her I was fine, which wasn't entirely true, but I wasn't about to fall apart over a woman with a ring she hadn't earned and a mouth she hadn't learned to control. See, here's what Brooke didn't know. Here's what Jake had conveniently forgotten in his rise to CEO glory. I wasn't just an engineer. I was the one who'd built the vendor management system for the entire company, including every contract, every catering deal, every venue booking, every payment portal Jake's assistant used for his personal life because Jake was, frankly, too important to manage his own calendar. I had access to everything. Not because I was sneaky. Because I'd built the infrastructure myself and nobody had ever bothered to revoke my permissions. I went home that night and poured a glass of wine and just sat with it for a while. I wasn't going to do anything petty. I told myself that. I was an adult, a professional, a woman with an engineering degree and self-respect. Then I remembered the way Brooke's voice had dipped into that fake sweet octave, the way Jake's silence had felt like a verdict, and I thought, you know what? Maybe I'll just look. Just to see. Just to know what I was dealing with. What I found was a wedding spreadsheet so meticulously detailed, it could have been a military operation. Venue. A vineyard outside Fredericksburg. Non-refundable deposit of $11,000. Cater booked through the company's vendor portal because Jake apparently thought it was funny to use his own business discount code for his wedding, which, by the way, was something I had personally negotiated with that caterer 2 years earlier as a perk for employees, not for him to use on his fourth try at love. Florist, also through company vendor credits. String quartet, paid through a corporate account meant for client events. Had been quietly funneling his wedding expenses through business relationships I had built, using discounts that existed because of relationships I had personally maintained, all while standing next to a woman who called me a little helper in front of my coworkers. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, although I was, but because my brain was doing the thing it does when it finds a problem to solve. By morning I had a plan, and it was so simple, it almost felt anticlimactic. I am, technically, still the administrator of every vendor account associated with that company. Jake never changed that. Nobody ever changed that, because nobody thought the woman who built the system would ever use it against the man who broke her heart and let his fiancée humiliate her in public. I called the vineyard first, identifying myself honestly as the account holder for the company's vendor relationship, and I asked a very simple question. Was the wedding booking under the corporate discount code? And if so, was that authorized? The coordinator paused. She said she'd have to check. I told her to take her time. Then I called the caterer. Same question, same honest identification, same pause on the other end of the line. By the time I called the florist, word had apparently started spreading because she sounded nervous before I even finished my sentence. I just want to confirm, I said sweetly, that all vendor discounts tied to our company account are reserved for verified business use in accordance with our contract terms. If a personal event is using those discounts without authorization, that would actually be a contract violation on our end, and I'd hate for any of you to get caught in the middle of that. I wasn't lying. I wasn't threatening. I was simply, calmly, doing my job as the account administrator, asking the exact questions any responsible employee would ask if they noticed unauthorized use of corporate discounts. It just so happened that the unauthorized use belonged to my ex and his fiancée, and it just so happened that within 48 hours, every single vendor had frozen the bookings pending internal review. Jake called me Thursday night, and I almost didn't pick up. When I did, his voice had that particular tightness men get when they're trying not to sound panicked. Mia, what is going on with the vineyard? They're saying there's a hold on our booking. The caterer too. Did you do something? I noticed some discrepancies in vendor discount usage, I said very calmly, very professionally, like I was reading off a quarterly report. As account administrator, I had to flag it. Standard procedure. Silence. A long one. You're seriously doing this, he said. Over a comment Brooke made at a party? No, I said. I'm doing this because you used company resources for a personal event without authorization, which is something I would have flagged for anyone, including you, if I'd noticed it sooner. The timing is just unfortunate for you. He didn't believe me, obviously, and honestly, I didn't need him to. 2 days later, Brooke called. She'd gotten my number from somewhere, probably Jake's phone, and she did not bother with pleasantries. You're trying to ruin my wedding, she said, her voice shaking with the kind of fury that comes from someone who's never been told no in her life. I'm trying to make sure company resources are used appropriately, I said. If your wedding planning is falling apart because of that, that's between you and your fiancé's spending habits. Do you know how much money this is costing us? The vineyard wants full retail rate now, on top of a rebooking fee. The caterer dropped us entirely. We have 80 guests and nowhere to put them in 6 weeks. Her voice cracked a little, which I'll admit gave me a flicker of something that was not quite guilt but was adjacent to it. Just a flicker, though. That sounds really stressful, I said. I hope it works out. You're a horrible person, she spat. I'm an engineer who does her job, I said, and hung up. I thought that would be the end of it, a clean little victory I could tuck away and feel quietly satisfied about for the rest of my life. But it wasn't, because Brooke wasn't done. She posted a vague, weepy video that night, the kind influencers post when they want sympathy, without saying anything specific, talking about toxic people in our orbit and protecting your peace during wedding season. She didn't name me, but enough of her followers had seen the holiday party rumors floating around that my name started showing up in her comments anyway. People I'd never met were calling me jealous, bitter, obsessed with my ex. I sat there scrolling through it at midnight feeling something twist in my stomach, because it's one thing to stand your ground in a boardroom and another to watch strangers decide who you are based on a 30-second video. I called Sarah, half panicking, and she talked me down the way good friends do. You didn't do anything wrong, she said. You flagged a contract violation. That's literally your job. If she wants to make herself the victim online, that's not your problem to manage. I knew she was right, but it still took me a few days to stop checking the comments, to stop letting strangers with ring lights decide my worth. Hair race where it gets jumpy because the universe apparently wasn't done either. Word got around the office fast, the way these things always do, and a few of my coworkers who'd been at that holiday party started piecing things together. One of them, a sweet guy from accounting named Tom, came to my desk a week later looking like he was holding a secret he couldn't carry alone. You should know, he said quietly, Jake's been pulling discretionary funds for months. Not just the wedding stuff. Client dinners that never happened. Conference trips where he never showed up. I noticed it doing the quarterly reconciliation, but figured it wasn't my business. I sat with that for a moment because suddenly this wasn't just about vendor discounts and a petty fiancé anymore. This was actual money, company money, the kind that matters to a board. I asked Tom to send me what he had, and what he had was damning. 18 months of small, sloppy, arrogant misuse, the kind a man does when he thinks nobody is paying attention because he's the CEO and CEOs don't get questioned. I didn't go to the board immediately. I'll admit that. Part of me wanted to sit on it, savor it a little, decide what to do with this kind of power. I even drove past the vineyard one afternoon, just to see it, this beautiful rolling property that was supposed to host the wedding that ended my relationship with any illusions I had left about Jake. I sat in my car in the parking lot for 10 minutes, not crying, just thinking, and then I drove home and opened my laptop because the engineer in me, the part that believes systems should work the way they're supposed to, won out over the part of me that wanted revenge for revenge's sake. I compiled everything Tom had given me with the timestamps from my own vendor logs, built a clean, undeniable report, and sent it to the board chair, a sharp older woman named Dana who'd always treated me like I had something worth saying in meetings, with a simple note. Thought you should see this before next quarter's review. The board meeting happened on a Tuesday. I wasn't in the room, obviously. I was just an engineer with equity, not an executive, but I heard about it within the hour because nothing stays quiet in a company that small. Jake was placed on immediate leave pending investigation. Dana called me personally that evening, which surprised me, and said simply, "Thank you for bringing this forward instead of burying it." That took integrity. I hadn't expected to feel emotional about that, but I did a little because for years the loudest narrative in that office had been about Jake's vision and Jake's charisma, and nobody had ever stopped to ask who actually held the place together. The wedding, already crumbling under vendor cancellations, fell apart entirely when Brooke discovered, through a very public Instagram comment from someone who clearly knew the situation, that the man she was marrying had been quietly broke for months and hiding it behind borrowed company glamour. The comment, from an anonymous account, simply read, "Ask him where the conference budget went." It spread fast. By the next morning, Brooke had unfollowed him, deleted every photo of the two of them, and posted a single black square with no caption, the influencer version of a scream. She left him within the week. I heard she posted something vague about growth and protecting her peace, which made me laugh out loud in my kitchen, alone, with a glass of wine in my hand, feeling lighter than I had in years. Funny enough, a few of her followers found their way to my profile after that, not to attack me this time, but to apologize for the comments they'd left earlier. I didn't respond to any of it. Some doors you just let close quietly. Jake reached out one more time, weeks later, after the investigation confirmed everything and the board quietly eased him out with a settlement designed to avoid a scandal. He didn't apologize, not really. He just said, "I didn't think you'd actually do something like this," and I told him that was exactly the problem, that he never thought I'd do anything because he never thought of me as someone who mattered enough to fight back. I wished him well, which was true, in the distant way you wish anyone well from the other side of a closed door, and I hung up the phone for the last time. I still work at that company. I got a promotion 6 months later, partly because the new interim CEO, a steady, no-nonsense man named Greg, who'd been COO for years and finally got his shot, finally noticed that the person who built half the infrastructure deserved a seat at the actual table. I run my own team now, 6 engineers who actually listen when I talk in meetings instead of waiting for me to finish, so they can get back to discussing Jake's latest idea. I still maintain the vendor accounts, though I've since set up proper access controls and approval chains, because the universe apparently agreed with me that a system shouldn't be that easy to misuse, even by someone trying to do the right thing. Brooke's influencer account went quiet for a few months and then resurfaced with a new boyfriend and a sponsored post about manifesting better partners, which, honestly, good for her, I guess. Jake moved to Dallas, last I heard, doing some kind of consulting work that nobody in our old office could quite explain when they brought it up at lunch. Tom got promoted, too, into a finance director role he absolutely deserved, and he still brings me coffee sometimes when he wants to talk through a number that doesn't add up, which I've come to appreciate more than almost anything else in that building. People ask me sometimes if I regret it, going as far as I did, letting one comment at a holiday party spiral into a man's career falling apart. I tell them no, because it was never really about the comment. It was about a man who let me be humiliated in front of my colleagues and thought there'd be no consequences, who used the work I built to fund a wedding with a woman who looked at me like I was furniture. The comment was just the moment I stopped being patient. The rest, the spreadsheets, the discrepancies, the quiet phone calls to vendors, that was just me finally letting the truth catch up to him. I didn't cancel his wedding because I was bitter. I canceled it because I was done being invisible in a story I helped write. And honestly, watching it all unravel, vendor by vendor, dollar by dollar, felt less like revenge and more like closing a door that should have shut a long time ago, the kind of door you don't slam, you just turn the lock quietly and walk away, knowing it's never opening again.